Welcome back to another episode of Digital. Today we are talking to Melissa Packham, the founder of A Brand Is Not a Logo. And if that doesn't give it away, we're talking all things brand and brand strategy. We talked to Melissa about why it is so important in today's day and age to invest in your brand strategy and make sure that you have all of those very important components, your brand, your tone of voice, your values, everything that you stand for as a brand, and have a plan in place to execute that to assist in the growth of your business. So really fantastic conversation. We break it right down. Melissa makes it super simple. And from an SME perspective as well, right? We're not talking, big corporate. We're talking your everyday local SME businesses who really want to focus on growing their business and improving their brand. So stay tuned. That episode is coming up next. Welcome to Digital, a podcast brought to you by AttentionMedia, a location-agnostic digital growth agency helping businesses become iconic brands. On this show, we dive into the hottest topics, the latest updates, and what's working in social media and digital marketing right now to get you up to speed and keep you informed. And if you want to grow your business through strategic digital marketing, head over to attentionmedia.com.au, click on the Book a Discovery Call tab, fill out some details, and we'll be in touch. We'd also love to know if you're listening to this show. So please take a screenshot, upload it to your preferred social media account, and tag us at Attention Media Agency. Let's get into the show. All right, Melissa, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Not at all. Very excited for this conversation. As we spoke about just before we went live, we were talking about how the whole idea for Digital, being the podcast, is that we can create some, snackable, digestible content for the listeners to stay up to date with what's happening in the digital world, in the marketing space. And I'm very excited for our conversation today because we're going to be touching on your particular skill set being brand and marketing, but it's definitely a topic that we haven't really touched on yet. And it's very, very important. So thank you very much for joining us. Melissa, from A Brand Is Not a Logo, we'd love to hear a little bit more about yourself and your backstory and how your business came to be.
Yeah, sure. So as the name suggests, I do things that aren't actually developing logos. So I'm a brand and marketing strategist, and I work with small to medium-sized businesses to help them get strategic foundations in place before they start activating their marketing activity so that it's all aligned with their business objectives and where they want to take their brand. I started my career as a career marketer back in the early 2000s, working for some big name fast-moving consumer goods companies. So
Nice.
I've worked for Campbell's and Arnott's and Parmalat. So Icebreak was one of my brands, and Oak Flavoured Milk was a fun brand that I worked on as well. So
Cool.
It's very much consumer brand marketing, which covers every facet of marketing, from brand development right through to 360-degree marketing execution.
Love that.
And I left corporate in 2016 because life changes and values change, and I needed to find myself. So I went and did that by traveling for a little bit. And what I saw was, meeting with different startups and small businesses all around the world, that a lot of people were missing the fundamental step of developing strategy before launching into, launching their amazing new product and business. So I felt there's a bit of a gap here, and I can help fill that gap by educating them first on what brand strategy is, what its importance is, and what it can deliver back to their business. So I've brought that back in. I live in Brisbane, but I work with clients kind of globally. So that's what I've been helping people do. Yeah.
Fantastic. So after leaving, quote unquote corporate, what was the obviously you definitely loved the field and the industry that you were in, but that sort of transition, I suppose, from going to corporate to starting your own business, what was kind of the, was that something that you always thought you were going to do, or was it just sort of something that naturally occurred, post leaving the big brands that you were working for?
Yeah. No, I had no plan. So ironically, I didn't have a strategy for myself and what I would end up doing. But I It worked out well for me,
Yes.
thankfully. But yes, I knew that I could take my skills and kind of help that small to medium sized business, because there isn't a lot of that sort of capability at that level. So, they're product or service experts in what they're delivering to the world, but they don't necessarily even know the right questions to be asking in those early stages before they scale up and start to fill those kinds of roles in their business. So that's definitely where I saw the need, and it feels good. It feels good to contribute value for businesses that size and sort of head them in the right direction from there. So yeah, that's what lights me up.
Love that. Excellent. So I think you've mentioned a couple of times now in terms of the keyword strategy, brand strategy, etc. And I think for whether we're talking brand, whether we're talking digital marketing, whether we're talking social media campaigns, that word strategy is so important, and it really does set you up for success and better results. That prior planning definitely has a place, but it is one of the, I suppose, the trickier, maybe the not so fun components of executing, but it is really, really important. So for the SME owner, for the person who's either starting a business, maybe they're in an established business, why, in your words, is strategy important, and what does sort of strategy mean? Like, what does that involve?
Yeah, it could be a totally overwhelming piece of the puzzle, and exactly as you said, it's so easy to focus on the shiny bells and whistles of what looks good and what sounds good, and creating campaigns. But strategy for me, it should be fun because it's fundamental to the business. So I kind of talk about it like it's like architecture. So strategy is the plan that you lay the foundations. You know exactly what goes where, what needs to happen in order to realize your vision of the final product. So before you can have the builders come in and the carpenters and the electricians and the plumbers, you've got to have a plan for them. Otherwise, nothing really comes together, and it kind of, there's ad hoc behavior going on. It's crazy. It's chaos. So it's the same for business. And that's the importance of strategy, is to have that laid out. And if it's not fun, then they're working with the wrong people. So I try and make strategy fun, because it comes from inside, and strategy can unlock so many great benefits for businesses. One of them is just that clarity. And with clarity comes time saving, because you're not mulling over and overthinking decisions about where to take your brand and business next. You've got a blueprint to work from, to always refer back to, so that if it doesn't fit with this vision, it's not going to happen. Let's move on. So it saves you time. It saves you money by not investing in the wrong bits and pieces that aren't actually going to deliver results that you're expecting. So having that clear strategy with objectives laid out means that you know exactly what you need to be putting your money towards to get the results. It unlocks competitive advantage. We are living in such competitive times, and there's so many options for any consumer or customer to go to alternatives. So competitive advantage is about unlocking what it is that makes you special and important, and how you deliver value to your customers. So having that clarity is really key up front, so that you know what you need to say to people in your marketing activity. And it engages your team. That's the other. Yeah, it's kind of important. And it's engaging, right? So good brand strategy means everyone can rally around, what is this vision? What are we building here? How can we all contribute and feel like we're building this thing together? And that's, that's such an intangible thing, but also tangible in the end, because it means you're attracting good talent, you're keeping amazing employees, and people are performing better because they're so engaged in the vision that they want to make that a reality.
So true. And I think it, definitely sort of going back to, it should be fun. It really does sort of tie into, where do we want the business to go? Where do we want the company to go? What do we want to stand for? What do we want to stand against? So it really is kind of, you're painting that blue sky scenario, what is the end goal? Where do we want to get to? And then how do we make that happen? And, forming the brand around those questions, right? So, it definitely can be fun. And I think it definitely also ties into, even things like your workplace culture and stuff like that, right? The way that you talk to your audience and your community, the word and the language that you use, as you mentioned before. Like, there's so many different components that go into it, which then help you to build that quote unquote brand. So really, really love that. What about what are sort of some of the things that go into that brand strategy, such as purpose or values or your tone of voice, all that sort of thing? Is that the type of stuff that you work on as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the second piece of the puzzle. So I always break down strategy into three components. The first bit is you have to have an understanding of what it is that you're trying to do. What is the context that you're operating within? So having that external learning and knowing about the people that you want to attract is critical. Otherwise, you're building a plan for not sure what. So you've got to have that first. And then the second component is that foundational piece. So that's where you create the framework that you're going to use to, the lens, I guess, that you're going to operate within. And that's where things like your brand vision, values, personality, tone of voice, value proposition, benefits, all that kind of stuff comes into it. And then the third piece is, okay, so what do we do? What's the plan? What's the, setting objectives, developing those strategies and tactics to help you build to that thing that you want to build. So yeah, it's those three components, but I kind of help right through that piece. And then my work ends and hands over to execution specialists like yourselves to go and make the thing happen.
Love that. And it certainly, again, comes back to any work that we would potentially do with a client as a marketing agency, managing social media or paid campaigns. It's so important for us to be able to access and utilize, the brand strategy of the client or the partner that we're working with, so that what we execute on, everything is on brand, right? We have the tone of voice down pat, right? We're talking to the right people, we're targeting the right audiences. So as you said, the strategy really is, the brand strategy is the foundation that you can then build upon. And I really like the fact that you can kind of picture it in that way, so that it makes sense that if you don't have a foundation there, there's not really anything to build off, right? So you do need that direction. I also love the fact that you've got it broken down into that 3-step process, right? So as you said, the step number 1 is the direction. What are we doing? Lens. Step 2 is the lens. So what do we stand for? What is the tone of voice? All that sort of stuff. And then the third step is the plan, right? How do we go and execute this and put our brand out into the world? So absolutely love that. What sort of one key question would be, what sort of time would you expect to invest, I suppose, into putting a brand strategy together, right? So let's say, for example, we have an SME owner who's listening in. They might be a year or two into business, but at this point, all they really have been able to do is put a quick logo together, get some social media content out, get a website out, and they're thinking, right, listening to this, we need to work on our brand strategy. What sort of time, what sort of investment is going to be involved in that?
Yeah. So I'm going to start by saying that an investment in your brand is investing in your most important asset. So when you put that as the lens through which you're looking at, making decisions about A, how much to invest time-wise, and B, money-wise, if you think about it being the most important thing, it kind of gives you, sets you up there. Typically, my engagement with a client will go, initially from that first stage of the process right through to, handing over to people to then execute the plan, is a 4 to 6 month engagement. Typically, that's because good strategy takes time.
100%.
It takes time to uncover those key insights that are going to move the dial for your business and connect and resonate with the people that you're seeking to connect with. And it's all about a partnership. So my approach is a partnership. I'm not sort of here to sprout at you, lecture about what needs to be done. And it's a collaborative process. And the reason that's important is because if there's no buy-in and people aren't along the journey of building the brand and sort of laying out these foundations, it's not going to work. And that's one of the key pitfalls that I've seen happen is if there's no buy-in to this process, and it can be challenging because it's a creative process and there's not if you're a functional, logical kind of, space, and you're a business owner, it can be hard to switch your brain to that kind of thinking. But it is essential. And when you link it back to, the levers it's going to pull for your business and drive forward, then it becomes a commercial decision to make. So it is a long engagement, long-ish, and typically I don't like letting my clients go, and they don't like letting me go after that work either. So I kind of stay on board with them to help them start to implement that by helping them manage the people that they need to get in, the copywriters, the web developers, social media managers, etc.
Yes.
Just to make sure that transition happens. But the other piece that is important is that this isn't a tick and flick. Like, you don't do it once and then it's done. You've got to set an intention with this and roll it out and experiment. And I know you guys are big advocates for that kind of experimental mindset as well when it comes to actually getting insights from your marketing activity, so that you can then, again, fuel that back into the start of the plan and move it forward and optimize. So yeah, you've got to test and learn and see what people are actually connecting with, and what messages are landing, and what conversion is happening. So it is something that you check in on in a regular basis.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it is, again, brand in itself, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, but brand is becoming, one of the main points of difference in a world where people have so many options, so many industries are, they're commercialized. You can get the same product from, 100 different companies, 100 different service providers. And at the end of the day, what is it that really sets you apart? And for us playing in the marketing space, we are looking to build community. We're looking to reach audiences and connect with them on an emotional level. We're looking to communicate the value propositions that a company has. That all comes back to brand, right? How do you get an edge over your competitor? Your brand has to connect with a consumer in some way, shape or form. And that's how you attract a customer and keep a customer long-term. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. Absolutely, 100%. Brand is what takes you from commodity and talking about price and race to the bottom to get best price, to talking about value and loyalty and advocacy. So having people talk about you, that's the difference. That Starbucks meme, the cup of coffee that has nothing on it that's got $2 on it, but the cup of Starbucks that has the logo and all that means to people, selling for $6. That's the difference.
Yeah, I love that. And you can look at some of the biggest brands in the world, right? Whether it's Apple or Mercedes or whatever kind of industry it is, but those brands, attract people and consumers to them, not just because of the product or service that they supply and the quality and all that sort of stuff, but it means something to own a good or use the service of a company like that, because they have a brand that is established. It's they stand for things, they stand against things, and people align themselves with that. And I feel that with everything that's going on, especially in the digital marketing space, with the Apple iOS updates that have come through, a very big push towards privacy, less tracking, etc., and so forth, with many changes that are going to come out over the next couple of years in that space, it's the way to not compensate, but the way to jump ahead of your competition in a world where the tracking is not going to be what it used to be. Again, it all comes back to brand. Like, it's your company versus your competitor in the same marketplace. Why is the consumer going to choose your company? It's going to be brand, right? It's who do they align themselves with?
Yeah, and that's relevant for both B2B and B2C, because the surprising fact is it's a human making a decision in both of those industries. So it's still about that emotional connection. It just changes the lens through which that decision is being made. So yeah, absolutely. And I think on top of the privacy and the tracking thing, that people are looking for purpose-driven brands and brands that wear their values on their sleeve and communicate that in a meaningful way and make meaningful contributions outside of just the product or service that they're there to provide. So, there are plenty of studies, and increasingly so, about consumer preferences for brands that have purpose at the core, and act on that. So there's one thing to, it's nice to have a purpose. That's great. That's very lovely. But actually what happens as a result of that, and how is a brand acting on that, that is becoming increasingly important. Because of that reason, consumers have the choice. They have the ability to do the research and find someone that does align with their personal values as much as, the values that are associated with the product or service. So yeah, there's more to it. It's getting more complex. It's overwhelming, but it doesn't have to be, because you just need to break things down to its simplest form and really think hard about what is the impact we want to have in our category or industry, and how can we do that in a positive way and communicate that to our consumers so that we can connect with them on something more meaningful.
And potentially surprisingly, but especially the younger generation as well, are really rallying around brands that do communicate their values, right? Whether it's environmentally friendly, whether it's a vegan or vegetarian, whether it's any kind of the big plays that are in the world now, especially the younger generation, are really, aligning themselves with brands that are often quite outspoken in what they stand for, right? It's coming across in their messaging, whether it's in, social media, traditional media, whatever it is, the products, how they're made, how they're sourced, how they're produced, it's becoming, very, very prevalent within the younger generation. And that is the next big consumer base that's coming through. So again, it all comes back to brand.
That Generation Z has been likened to the same kind of skeptical apathy that Generation X had. So they're coming through after, a period of, everything that's happened through those previous generations, but they've inherited this. And so, yes, they are more discerning about brands that really align with their values, because their future's right there. And they've got all of these pressures, social and environmental, happening, all of the social movements that are driving, people speaking out and brands speaking out. And the brands that don't do very well at that, or the brands that ignore it, are those that are going to get left behind. So yeah, they are becoming one of the most powerful consumer groups in the world, as they come to, they're actually quite older than you think. They're in their 20s now. So, they've got money now, they've got money to spend, and they're making their own decisions. So yeah, absolutely. They're one to keep an eye on, and to really think about how, how they will shape the world.
So true. And I think, I've had the thought here as we're talking about this, bringing this back to, the business owner level, right? And again, they're listening into this, but they might be an industry where they are in, let's say a highly competitive industry. So if we're thinking smaller SME business owners, it might be a retail, brick and mortar retail store. It could be a hairdresser. It could be a bakery. It could be anything that is fairly common, and again, they could be thinking, right, well, what is my point of difference? I sell a commodity that is fairly popular. There's lots of different options that people can purchase it from. But how am I in my business and in my industry going to be expressing the business's values? Like, where do we even start? But I think for everybody who is in that headspace and is in that place, it's as simple as actually making a start, having a strategy, and just executing on it, because that immediately is going to put you into the top 1% in your industry, because so many people are still not doing it yet. And especially in, industries that are probably more commonplace, like the ones that I just mentioned. And it doesn't have to be super, philosophical or anything that's too outspoken or crazy or controversial, but just having, just doing the work and executing that brand strategy and then communicating that across all of your marketing channels, it's immediately going to set you apart from a lot of the competition. Would you agree?
I agree. Absolutely. And it's quite unexpected for it to be, that level of conversation when it comes to brand in businesses like the ones that you've listed. So that's an immediate kind of standout, like, oh, my bakery's talking about their brand values. That's really, and oh, wow. And I can see that they're living by that because, they're hiring local and they're giving back to the community, or they're sourcing local ingredients and those kind of things. And suddenly there's a connection there that's being made. So yeah, it's unexpected and of course provides an opportunity to really stand out.
Love that. Love that. What are some of the main mistakes, I suppose, that you might see within the industry, whether it is let's say a poorly designed logo, for instance, or what are some of the things that people could kind of have a look over their current brand as it is and say, right, we really need to sort of work on that? What are some of the key areas that people often sort of trip up?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think you raise a great point about auditing your brand and where it's at. That's a really great place to start. And so if if you start with your logo, your visual assets, what is that saying to you? What message is that projecting? And not just to you, because it's easy to go, oh, I'm so sick of my logo, I'm done with it. Let's rebrand. But it's got to be more than that. That's like, changing your clothes and expecting to be a different person. It doesn't work like that. So start by asking questions, I think, and I think probably a lot of clients, certainly that I have seen, and small to medium sized businesses forget that they've got people that they can ask, and that's their current clients or customers. So ask them what's on their mind, what's keeping them up at night, what do they want from businesses like yours, what are they looking for really. Keep asking why. It's a great question because it just gets to the root cause of stuff, and then you've got a sense of are we delivering or projecting what we want to be projecting here, and if we're missing the mark, potentially what are the gaps there, and how could we go about addressing that, and over what time frame. It has to be manageable, right? Can't just be this is a commercial thing that we're talking about. It's not just aesthetics and having a nice website for the sake of it. It's got to be connected to commercial reality and making a commercial result. So spending time in this area and getting this stuff right is about securing the foundations for long-term growth and sustainable growth.
Yeah, and I think that's a key sort of message there again is that long-term growth. If you're in business, if you have a brand and you really do want to drive the growth of that brand into the future, these are the sorts of things that you really need to invest in and work on. To make sure that you have the best chance for that success, because everything that we've obviously spoken about is so important in today's world. Like standing for something, having a solid brand, and communicating that message over a long period of time. Like these sort of things, it doesn't create success overnight. It is a long-term thing. It's about building, trust with your consumer base and those that you want to do business with. So really key points. And I think that even ourselves here at AttentionMedia at the moment, we're really looking deeply into our brand strategy and rebranding and putting ourselves in our customers' shoes, right? Because it can be so easy, starting your business, starting your brand, starting your baby, right? And you can get very attached to it and the way that it looks and the way that you want it to look. But that's not necessarily going to set you up for the type of success that you want from your business. It really does need to come from your customers' shoes. What do they want? How can you solve their problems? And your brand and how you portray your brand needs to align with them, not so much you. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's really hard because
Irony.
we want it to look a certain way.
Yeah. I totally feel that. I'm going through that at the moment, going through a rebrand myself. So, I've done the same thing. I do the same things as small business owners. I've done the DIY. I've built my own website. You're scrappy, you're saving money. And, but but there comes a point where you have to trust, and yeah, put it in the hands of experts to make sure that it's saying what you want it to say. And that's a struggle that a lot of small businesses have, is unable to either articulate it clearly or execute it in the way that really makes sense. So yeah, there is that, and it's a challenge, because there is that emotion attached, especially in small business. You do have to remember that your brand isn't actually about you at all, and that's 100%. Hard to realize.
Yes. Oh, so brutal.
I know, it's brutal.
No, look, I think a very valuable conversation, and to kind of go back and just repack everything that we've discussed so far. It is that having that brand strategy is super important, because, as you said, it lays the foundations, and you can simplify that, right? Like, obviously, working with experts like yourself, you have the strategy, you have the step-by-step process to break that down, do it effectively, and then go and execute on it as well. Because you can do all of the strategy under the sun, but if it doesn't get implemented, then it's not going to have the desired impact. So I think when we look at it that way, it really does kind of take a lot of the scary factor out of it, and that you can go ahead and do something that is going to improve your brand and improve your business overall. So thank you so much for sharing all of those fantastic tips.
Oh, thank you. I'm happy to get up on a soapbox and talk about brand strategy anytime.
How can people find out more about yourself, Melissa, and your business?
Yeah, so I can be found at abrandisnotalogo.com, or people can connect with me on LinkedIn. So just Melissa Packham on LinkedIn.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time, and we will definitely have to get you back on the show one day.
Yeah, thank you. Such a pleasure. Thanks so much, Anthony.
So that's it for another episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. As we mentioned, we'd love to get your thoughts and feedback on this episode. You can do that by heading over to our Instagram at AttentionMedia Agency and letting us know what your thoughts. Send us a message. We'd love to hear from you. We'd also love to know what you'd like us to talk about in upcoming episodes. So send us your topic ideas. We are always interested. And if you'd love to know more, head over to the website attentionmedia.com.au. That's all for now. We'll see you in the next episode.